Welcome to the Area Podcast from the Ames Regional Economic Alliance. I'm your host, Eric Smith. On today's episode, we're joined by NASCAR driver Carson Ware and Andrew Allen, President and CEO of YSS, as they share the story behind the Before It Becomes More campaign. We discuss Ware's journey through addiction and recovery, the importance of reducing stigma, and how he's using his NASCAR platform to encourage others to seek help. This episode is presented by Flynn Wright, a full-service ad agency in Iowa that works with some of the best brands in the world. When you love what you do, you show up differently. And for more than 40 years, the love of advertising has fueled the people, the energy, and the bold ideas at Flynn Wright. Carson Ware, thank you for being on this episode of the Area Podcast. How are you?
I'm doing good. I appreciate you having me.
Oh, man, this is going to be great. So NASCAR driver, I got my co-pilot here, Andrew Allen, President and CEO of YSS. This is an incredible opportunity, and you're going to have quite a weekend here racing at the Iowa Speedway here on Saturday. Are you excited for that? You excited to be in Iowa?
Oh, yeah. I'm very excited for any race weekend, but, this one in particular is very special, and we have a lot of really cool things going on this weekend, and we'll get right into it.
Well, this is great. So Andrew and I, we had a conversation last week and said, listen, we got a really unique opportunity coming here to Iowa. You, NASCAR driver, you're joining forces with YSS and talking about a campaign Before It Becomes More, strengthening Iowans against opioids. And your car looks sweet. I saw the renderings. It's a new wrap. But tell me about the campaign. And Andrew, you're going to jump in here as well.
Yeah, so, this campaign is very personal to me. I myself am in recovery, and I've been on, both sides of the spectrum with, overdoses and seizures and things like that. So, this weekend for me is a lot bigger than just racing. This is about a personal relationship that I built with Mr. Allen and, everybody at YSS, and, the campaign of, spreading awareness for, prevention against opioid overdoses and, helping the youth with, trying to get sober at a young age. I dealt with that myself growing up, and I know how tough it is, and with this day and age and all the distractions in the world, being a teen is even harder, trying to get sober than it was when I was 16, 17, and 18. So, this is something that I've really looked forward to doing, and I've wanted to open this door to start using this platform and racing to be open and talk about these things. I feel like, with this day and age that a lot of people, kind of keep themselves closed off and don't necessarily want to share their stories. And for, everybody has different reasons, but, I want to take this opportunity to be open and do my part in spreading awareness and doing something important.
Very good. Yeah, Andrew, jump in. So tell us your perspective on how this campaign got going, and then we're going to dive into a lot of other topics.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Just couldn't be more proud of the partnership with Carson Ware, with NASCAR, with Before It Becomes More. This is funded through opioid settlement dollars. So essentially, every state got millions of dollars to try to reduce opioid addiction and overdose. And to have a NASCAR driver who experienced addiction, went through treatment, overdosed, life was saved by Narcan, and is now in recovery 5 years, sitting right here in Iowa, partnering with YSS, is a really big deal. So YSS was the recipient of some opioid settlement funds. Part of our goal is prevention and early intervention. And the best way to get the word out is to reach as many people as we can. And NASCAR's got a big base. It's got a rural base. And our message is you can do something before it becomes more. Iowa is number one in the country for binge drinking. We're number one in the country for young adults with substance use disorder. And for families, parents, caregivers to know that at the first onset of an issue, they can do something about it, reaching out through YSS, the Before It Becomes More campaign, and leaning into personal experience like Carson.
So here in the Area Podcast, it's up on the sign here, but we'd like to talk about personal stories and professional journeys. And what I find to be very interesting is oftentimes, one leads right into the other. And Carson, talking with you can't talk about one without talking about the other. Sure. So I want you to fill in some gaps here. I just got notes. Racing has been part of your whole life, I imagine. Your dad, Rick, now you're racing for him, Rick Ware Racing. Your brother races on the NASCAR circuit. So, you grew up with this. Just tell me a bit about that journey and that part of your life. And then ultimately, kind of maybe where it went wrong as well.
Yeah, so growing up in a racing family, I'd say our Friday and Saturday nights were probably a little different than traditional families. Most probably go to football games and whatnot and hang out. And We experienced a little bit of that, but it was definitely a very fast-paced, high-stress environment growing up. And, that wasn't anything my parents did on purpose, but, the business of racing is very tough. And, owning and operating a race team as a family, has its struggles. So, at a young age, I definitely, recognized, when my parents were stressed and, I could tell, we were tight on money and, having to worry about things that, normal families worry about. And, I will say that the coolest thing about it is how tight it made our family, growing up and, traveling together and spending so much time on the road with one another. It's, you build a special bond with your parents during times like that. And, they're a huge part of my success and reasons why I'm where I am today. And, it's been really cool.
I mean, you probably don't even remember a time where you weren't around a car.
I honestly, I don't, and I started racing BMX and motocross when I was around 5, 6, and 7 years old. So, from as early as I can remember, there was racing in my life. So
when did it become a choice for you to pursue? Because, at some point there's that pivot in a life where, mom and dad can tell you what to do and you like it and you're in the garage and you're around the cars. But at some point, you had to make the choice to pursue racing. When was that for you?
So, I grew up playing soccer and that was a big part of my life for a long time too. So I kind of juggled, soccer and racing. And when the time I was in 9th grade, I was playing soccer at a private Christian school and loving every minute of it. And around that time is when, I really started to have really hard battles with addiction and alcoholism. And my freshman year in 9th grade is when I had my first overdose, which was on Xanax. So that kind of was one of the first turning points in my life where my whole world changed and, the course of my life started to look a little bit different. So at the time, I thought, why is this happening? Why did this happen to me? And not understanding why everything happened the way it did. But that moment is when, I realized that I wanted to do something different. And that's when I put all my efforts into racing and started worrying about racing full time. And, when it happened, I was very disappointed. And, as I got older, I kind of looked back on life and was like, I wonder what could have happened if I would have chased that dream. And, would I have made it to the MLS or, would I have made it this far and whatnot? And, I always loved racing, but, if it weren't for that moment, I didn't know which way I would have gone and I wouldn't be here today with this opportunity with YSS. So, everything happened for a reason.
What age was that first overdose? You said like on Xanax?
I was 15.
Okay.
Yep, 2015.
So what were the stressors in your life, or what was I'd imagine it's, it starts slow, it's you dabble, you have access, it's now part, but then it just becomes more a part of your life. Like, did you know it at the time? Was it concerning? I mean, teenagers don't always, they're not thinking fully.
At the time I was trying to be negligent of it being a problem and not like really thinking about it. But, I was sharing with Andrew earlier, the first time that I got high after that moment, that's all I thought about. And, compared to my other friends, they were just like, hey, yeah, we'll hang out on the weekend and do it. But I was like, well, we should do this every day, and that's all I thought about. It consumed my thoughts. It consumed my everyday of like, as soon as I can get high, that's what I'm looking forward to. Wow. And, earlier in high school, I feel like, the party scene kind of becomes a thing and, buddies getting together, having bonfires or house parties and whatnot. And, that was kind of like really when it all started to ramp up and things started to change.
And Andrew, this is pretty consistent with, your entire life and professional career has been in service of this. So, just talk about maybe the parallels of what you see, every day at YSS.
Yeah, I think parents are struggling and they don't know where to turn. And so you think about a family with resources, a family that's got access to treatment like Carson's family did versus many of the families that we serve who don't necessarily know the direction. Even families of means sometimes don't know what to do. And so there's an interesting statistic. 1 in 5 of us will have a substance use disorder over a lifetime. That's 20%. If you can simply delay onset of first use until age 18, it drops to 5%.
Really?
1 in 20. Conversely, if first use of drugs or alcohol is before age 14, it's nearly half will have an issue during their lifetime with substances. And so, Carson's story, my personal journey of recovery, and I am a grateful person in recovery. I feel like the things that I went through provide perspective for the work that I do today. Yeah. But the reality is, if we can arrest this before it becomes an issue, before it becomes more, we're going to have, a lot of heartache saved for families and, fewer, expenses in the system and more productive people contributing to the society. So the message really is for families at first onset of an issue, reach out, ask for help. You can do something early before it becomes more.
So Carson, I'd imagine that you and your family have unpacked a lot of this, over the years. Like, what is their perspective of when you were, 15 years old? Did they see it? Did they not see it? Were they at a loss? Did they confront you? What was that?
Yeah, so when I first was caught, my first time smoking, it was definitely first round. It was kind of some disciplinary stuff. I forget whether they took my phone or whatever, but you're definitely not allowed to take the car out or go hang out with buddies and stuff. And we have a little bit of a family history of alcoholism and addiction on our side, so my parents were definitely aware. And we're trying to, like what he was speaking about, trying to find the right resources and avenues to go about it as a parent. And as I've gotten older and learned, I give my parents so much props for the pain and heartache that I brought to the table with the stuff that I was dealing with, because I wouldn't have known what to do about it either. And there's so many different resources and things and ways you can go about it that aren't necessarily the right way to do it. And you can end up using a lot of money in places that you shouldn't have, just trying to do the right thing. So I actually went to a teen challenge when I was 15 for 11 months in Bonifay, Florida, and spent 11 months out there. And while I got a lot of disciplinary stuff of like behavior and time management and scheduling and stuff, it was essentially kind of like a military school kind of deal. The one thing that I missed out on, and my parents had all the right, reasons for doing it, and they were suggested it, and they thought it was going to be one of the best options, but I didn't get that rehabilitation, therapeutical treatment that I needed to understand one of the really big causes of why I'm having these problems. And, I didn't get a chance to go to any meetings out there and do any of that stuff. So that didn't really have too much of a positive effect on, trying to get sober and starting that path in recovery. But shortly after that, my parents, helped me go to some of the greatest treatment centers I've been to, one like being Cumberland Heights. And fortunately, I was very blessed to have the resources, and my parents had the means to, keep the doors open and allow me to go to great treatment centers. So, it's definitely something to talk about. And, a lot of people don't have those resources, whether it's, the money or insurance things and the means to get to the places that really do have a greater impact.
This isn't the be all end all, but I mean, as a parent, obviously they're thinking about you first, and
Right.
they just want it to be better, and they don't want you to go down a path that, that could be destructive. And at the same time, they're also weighing this, like they're a public facing family, I mean, they have this business to run, and again, not that takes precedent, but it's had to have been a variable for them as well. Did they talk to you about that at the time, or did you hear any of it?
Honestly, I want to say that wasn't a conversation that we necessarily had.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful for that, because, I think I would have put, even more shame and guilt on myself if we had those conversations. And I think it was something that I always kind of realized and had in the back of my mind. We are on a very public platform, and we are in the public eye. And, that didn't stop my parents from wanting to help me. And, they never gave up on me, and still, at times where I said I wouldn't mess up anymore, and of course I messed up again. They were the first people to say, "Hey, well, where do you want to go? Where can we get you?"
So what was the key for you in recovery? And then Andrew, weigh in on maybe some themes that you see as well, because I'd imagine that it is not the same. There is not a light switch that you can just flip on and it works for everyone. But what was the key for you? And then Andrew, weigh in as well.
I'd say the thing that got me sober was genuinely hitting my rock bottom. And everybody's rock bottom looks different, right? Some people's are lower than others, and some people's are different. But, I finally got to a place in life where I was so tired of being sick and tired. And, we hear that a lot in the rooms, and that's a very common saying, but it's very true in my life and in my recovery. And, I finally was like, this isn't going anywhere. My bottoms kept getting lower and lower, and as I saw where I was going, it wasn't going to get any prettier, and it was already pretty scary. So, it just finally led me to a place in my life where I was like, I'm done, and that was sitting in a jail cell.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Andrew, what do you see as themes?
Yeah, I think Carson articulated it very well. You've got families who love their kids, who want what's best, who see them headed down a path of destruction and, trying to intervene and do something. And the key is not giving up, knowing that, if prevention doesn't work, that treatment does and that recovery is possible. And so, I see it almost every day. I had the experience myself on my knees, crying like a baby, saying, I can't keep living like this anymore. God help me. And for me, it was almost instantaneous, where I surrendered. And when Carson talks about hitting rock bottom, I think that is the theme. It's surrender. It's realizing I can't keep fighting. It's asking and accepting help. And so that's what we're doing at YSS, Ember Recovery Campus, working with kids from across the state, trying to get them to a point where they realize just how bad things are. The difference for people like Carson and I, getting sober in your early 20s, 5 years in recovery, your frontal lobe's not fully developed. So we're working with kids as young as 14 out at Ember, some actually 13-year-olds. So as teenagers, frontal lobes are not fully developed. You miss the understanding of consequences and reasoning. And so you look at a kid and you say, hey, why do you keep doing this? And my response was like, I don't know. And that oftentimes is what we hear. And so it's very, very difficult at a young age to get them to realize just how bad things are. That said, when it happens, I believe that recovery is easier. Things haven't gotten as bad. You don't have a criminal record. You don't have felonies keeping you from a job. You're not held down because of fines. The reality is, young people getting sober, you think about the work that the Alliance does around workforce development, around building communities. I would venture to guess, Carson, not only is he a great race car driver, but he's a great employee. Or even employers someday, people that have lived experience, have gone through struggle, have had to pull themselves up by the bootstraps, have perspective. And so that's what we're trying to do here. Carson is coming to Iowa to race tomorrow, but you're really plugged into what we hope is a movement. Iowa #1 for binge drinking, #1 for young adults with substance use disorder. If the pendulum is all the way over here, man, we are primed for it to swing back in the other direction and make Iowa one of the greatest places in the country for young people to recover. And we do that through testimonies, people sharing, hey, you know what? This impacted our family as well. And we came through it, and there is hope.
Absolutely.
So this is a forever lifestyle, and I know that both of you know that. And it's one thing to make the decision to go down the path of recovery and be committed to that. And then I feel like it's an extra decision to go out and publicly talk about it. I know I've known Andrew a long time. Talking about it publicly is your personal brand and your professional brand. That is who you are, and you've taken that on as well. But that feels like a whole nother level of commitment to be able to go out there and in many ways, you're continually reminding people that you struggled. And that takes a lot of courage to be able to do that. So as you went through this, how did you make that part of your mission? That's why we're here today, because that is part of your mission. You want to help save lives moving forward. But man, that takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, I definitely, had to do a lot of work on myself, and, you work through those things in recovery, dealing with ego, guilt, shame, and all those things. And, I kind of hit this turning point, as I got sober where, I learned to accept and appreciate the things that I've been through, and obviously, there's a lot of stigma and things that we're working on changing and changing the movement behind, people in recovery and alcoholism and addiction. And, I've learned to appreciate the stuff that I've been through and not be ashamed of it. And, what the coolest thing about it is that, in my hopes of being open about it and having a platform through racing and NASCAR to share and talk about these things, if I can even help one person, then I've done my job, I feel like. And I hope that it goes way further than one person. And, I feel like, everybody goes through stuff in life for a reason. And, I truly feel called to use this platform for not just results and how many sponsors I can get, but to try and help other people and be a part of something bigger than myself.
Yeah, it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
But the more people that we can get to share their stories, to talk about not just the great recovery, which is where you're at right now, but also the personal, hardship. When a family has a kid with cancer or leukemia, what happens? The whole community responds. They do a bake sale. They raise money. Everybody shows up in a positive way. When you've got a kid with substance use disorder, what does it look like? Chaos. Police showing up at the house. Families recoil, and they are afraid to share the story. So again, while it's not for everyone, and it is one day at a time, the reality is the more people like Carson that are able to share their story of recovery, share their story of treatment, give hope to the families out there that are struggling, the better.
So what has the response been on the business sense, maybe from NASCAR or sponsors or even your family who, is kind of the business sense for you as well? Like, what has been the response where, you've made this decision to jump all in and say, I'm going to talk about it. We have to talk about it. We're going to change lives through this process. What has been that response?
It's been really great. I actually last year when I, had the opportunities to be open and use the platform, the CW channel, which, broadcasts all of our O'Reilly races, gave me a segment at Martinsville last year to be able to talk about some of this stuff
really?
and have a piece on it, which was really cool. And, that was a really big deal for me. And that was a very emotional deal for me because, I felt like, being very public and open about my scenario, I am kind of like a black sheep essentially in racing. And I've learned to appreciate that and accept that. But, that the support has been enormous, and it's actually opened up a lot of doors with, people that I've known and new relationships with a lot of people that either have close loved ones, family members or spouses or kids that are dealing with the same thing. And, people that I never got to have those conversations with, I'm now having those, right? And, with people reaching out through Facebook Messenger and asking about recovery and that are either in racing or outside of racing that have, normal jobs and are still dealing with that stuff. So, it's been really cool, and it's a real special experience for sure.
The number of people that reach out to us, to people that put their story out is it's remarkable, and it's at every level. I mean, people in high places, people in low places, and everywhere in between. And so, I really just commend Carson and everybody out there that's leaning into this movement of recovery. Alcohol sales are down year over year across to the country. That said, a report just last week shows marijuana usage is the number one daily drug taken by Americans. More than tobacco, more than alcohol, marijuana. And while there are lots of different views about marijuana usage, the reality is kids our young people whose frontal lobes are still developing should not be smoking pot. And the more it's embraced, the less of a perception of risk there is for young people. So, doing things like this really gets the word out. It informs families that there are resources, but it also provides hope to those that are struggling. So I'm grateful for people like Carson.
This episode of the Area Podcast is sponsored by...
You will be told to follow certain rules for success. And you will follow your instincts instead. You will envy the person who can log off for the day. And you will accept you are not that person. You will start 1,000 sentences with, "This might sound crazy, but what if..." And you will do that crazy thing 1,000 times. Because you love what you do. And love will make you do crazy things.
At Heartland Roofing, Siding, and Solar, we believe in doing things the right way, even when no one is watching. Around here, hard work, honesty, and showing up still means something. We may cheer for different teams, but across Iowa, we're united with grit, trust, and a deep sense of community. That's what Heartland stands for, because this is home.
At Northcrest Community, we've made a lot of changes in the last 60 years, but the best things have remained the same. I'm Dawn Borwig, CEO of Northcrest, and I want to tell you why. When you choose Northcrest, you're beginning a new stage of fulfilling, worry-free living. Say goodbye to the burden of home maintenance and hello to an active, engaged community. As the only nonprofit, locally owned and operated community in Ames, we guarantee you a home and our care for the rest of your life. When your needs change, you stay right here. in your community, near your friends and your family. At Northcrest, no one is ever asked to leave because of a lack of funds. That's our nonprofit mission. That's the Life Care Promise. Our residents will tell you, don't wait, don't put it off. Come enjoy all the benefits Northcrest Living has to offer. To learn more, visit our website at northcrestcommunity.org or call to schedule your tour with Kimberly today.
Just south of Iowa State University, in the heart of the Midwest, sits the Iowa State University Research Park, 550 acres of opportunity and innovation. With over 1 million square feet of developed space, it's home to more than 145 tenant companies, from startups to global leaders. Discover innovation hubs, collaborative spaces, and a community that's shaping the future. Whether you're scaling up or starting fresh, ISU Research Park has room to grow. Visit isupark.org to learn more.
So we've talked about this some already, but the fact that you're able to talk about this as freely as possible, and there could be this impression that you're recovered, like past tense. And I know just, talking with Andrew over the years that, you're never recovered. And almost in any scenario, any lifestyle, the racing NASCAR lifestyle is part of that. Like, you're around opportunities to drink beer and I don't know about drugs. I mean, obviously the NASCAR is a drug policy, but you're around it. I mean, it's a lifestyle. I'm around it. Andrew, you're around it. I mean, so what do you tell yourself? How do you handle that? Because at any given moment, it could go off the rails again. I mean,
yeah, it's definitely a lifestyle. Alcohol and parties and celebrating after big wins and whatnot is definitely very common in racing. Yeah. And I've played that scenario through my head multiple times. Like, what, I just spray some non-alcoholic champagne or something, right? Or NA beer. But I love to remind myself of those places that I was at. And in the past when I had tried to get sober and I'd slipped up again, I didn't play the tape through the whole way. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. And remembering where I was at in life at the lowest points and, just all the emotions that I felt and dealt with and where I was at, was some of the darkest times of my life. And I'm honestly scared of those things, to go back to a place like that. I would never want to do that. So, just reminding myself of, and enjoying life that I have now. I have a life that I never thought I could achieve, whether it was through soccer or racing or working a normal 9 to 5, right? Like I never would have imagined the amount of peace and just gratefulness I have for life and what I get to enjoy now. It's honestly the best high I've had on the planet. Yeah. And being able to have real relationships with people and quality relationships with my family. And there were times where my family didn't want to take my phone calls because they didn't know if I was either dead, jail, or need money for substances, right? And that's the reality of it. And to be able to call my mom and to have those, it picks up first time. It's the smaller things in life that I've truly learned to enjoy and value so much. And I'm rich in life with that.
Well, and at this point, it's who you surround yourself with as well. I mean, everybody is on board with your mission and not only racing, but the recovery part as well. I mean, I just imagine the people around you, not just your family, but the rest of your team is 100% on board and ready to go. And they wouldn't let you do it either, So, no. Andrew, talk about your experiences as well. I mean, it's got to be the people around you, right?
You bet. Community is huge. Yeah. I mean, Carson and I have been talking for a few weeks. We showed up. We embraced. We are brothers in recovery, and I share it with the kids at Ember, especially at our recovery celebrations when kids graduate the program. If you want to be successful in life, hang out with successful people. Right?
Weird.
You want to be sober. Hang out with sober people. Yeah. And so there's plenty of occasions when I'm in fit spiritual condition where it's fine to be around people that are drinking. Yep. But to be honest, I just don't seek those opportunities out. I'm 30 years in recovery. And one of the most difficult times for me is right around the corner, tailgating season. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, parking lots fill up and the booze are flowing. And the environment is so festive that makes it difficult for people in recovery. And so I do think that the more options that we have for sober fun, the more options that we have for activities in the community, the better we're going to be. I've got a friend whose family prominent in the community, actually Drake Losey, Brian Losey's son. They've shared publicly about his journey. They sent him to Texas to get sober. He went to a halfway house in LA. I met him in Iowa, and I was so excited about the fact that he was sober. And he's like, I said, "You're going to meetings?" He's like, I went to some meetings, but it kind of sucks to be sober in Iowa. And I said, "What?" And he said, "It was cool to be sober in LA. Iowa kind of sucks." Man, as someone who's trying to lead a movement to make Iowa one of the greatest places in recovery, to hear that 5 years ago lit a fire inside of me to make Iowa cool. And so I think that it's not just people in recovery, it's the entire community. It's the entire state can respond and be looking for sober fun, activities, ways to embrace people that are in recovery and make this just a great place for young people, especially those in recovery.
Well, I know part of this campaign is trying to eliminate some of the stigma around it, but by saying that, we're acknowledging that a stigma around it continues to exist. Do you have experiences like with that where you continue to experience that? Andrew, I would imagine that you do as well. I mean, you kind of acknowledge some of it just in that, just the stats of Iowa that you shared and how maybe it can be uncool to be sober.
I think things are changing. It's true. When I graduated Iowa State, had done an article, and I asked for my name not to be used, nor my picture, because anonymity was important, and I felt like employers might use it against me. At Principal, I had a chance to share my story for the first time, and the CEO at the time, Barry Griswold, he came alongside me and encouraged me to share it. I had a mentor say, some people might use it against you, but those that you want to associate yourself with going forward will see it as a positive, and you'll have a chance to help a lot of people. So stigma's there. Sure. COVID did a great job at addressing the mental health piece. So pursuing therapists and counseling and knowing that mental health is an issue. Substance use is still there, and I think it's going to take more people like Carson talking about their journey, more families coming forward who have struggled to continue to address it.
So Carson, what do you want to see happen out of this campaign? I know later today you're going to go to YSS Ember Recovery. Obviously, the car is wrapped. The media attention is going to continue about you talking about this. But what do you want to see progress through this campaign?
Yeah, a lot of the things that, Mr. Allen touched on, I want to be a part of, the movement to make being sober cool and to, make people aware of the resources that, families and young teens have. And like I said, I want to continue to do the groundwork that we're doing, and by sharing my testimony and being open about it, through socials and the groundwork at the locations with YSS is what I want to continue to do, and I hope that we can touch whether it's hundreds, thousands, or hundreds of thousands of people in Iowa and outside of Iowa, and to share what we're doing. And to kind of touch on the stigma stuff that you had mentioned earlier, I've dealt with both of that on the non-racing side and the racing side. And as a teen growing up, I'm sure you experienced it's like you get labeled as the kid who drinks and uses drugs, and like your parents like, hey, you should not hang out with him. He's in the bad crowd. And,
Story of my life, Carson.
Yeah, and I was the poster child for that, and I've accepted that, and obviously a lot. I've grown from that, but it's. The thing that I've learned and I really appreciate about recovery is I've met some of the smartest, most business-minded and genuine individuals in the rooms of recovery and in recovery. And, obviously, for myself, speaking about my experience, I'm not the same person that I am today when I'm using and doing drugs. And, I've had some of the coolest friendships and built some of the best relationships possible with other people in recovery. And I wouldn't have had those opportunities if other people weren't open and sharing about their story. So I really hope to, share my testimony in hopes that these teens do see a light at the end of the tunnel, because I know there was times in my life where I thought that was going to be the rest of my life, and this is all I was going to know. And, I genuinely wish I could have just had a small taste of what I've experienced now. And I would like to think that it would have got me sober the first time.
Well, I'm not going to let this opportunity to talk with a NASCAR driver without talking about racing. So we're going to pivot here, and we're going to talk about you going around that oval. So, this Saturday you're going to be at the Iowa Speedway. That's considered a short track. It's less than a mile, but I mean, you've opened up the car on these big tracks as well, Daytona, Talladega. I'm a NASCAR fan. I mean, I like it. Admittedly, I don't watch it every weekend, but Daytona weekend, I mean, we earmark that one in our house, and we have a party with friends of ours, and it's fun. I mean, we watch it from beginning to end. But I mean, you're sitting there, you're getting ready, and you're in the car, and they do the start your engine. The rag's about ready to drop here, and you're going to be just for the next 3-4 hours going. I mean, I think I saw 130, this weekend, but on some of those big tracks, it's even more. I mean, articulate this. I mean, what is that like?
So for me, anxiety and those kinds of things are a big part of my story and recovery. When I strap into that race car, I'm the most calm and focused I ever am.
I've heard that before.
In my day-to-day life. Yeah. So, a lot of people ask, do you get nervous? Are your nerves really high? Like, honestly, I'm in my Zen place when I'm in the race car. It's definitely an adrenaline-filled fun, and it's very intense. And obviously, growing up in racing and in that lifestyle, it almost feels normal, right? It's a part of my life, and to other people, it seems so foreign, but it's I wouldn't trade it for anything, man. It's a lot of fun. I get my kick with adrenaline and get my little high racing, man. It's really cool.
So you get that, but I mean, does your world kind of slow down when you're in there? I mean, this weekend you're going to be peaking out at 130 some miles an hour. I mean, that's nuts.
Yeah, it honestly does feel a lot slower. Like when you're in the moment, and you like whenever I leave the racetrack after a race, like I'm subconsciously going over the speed limit because I've been so used to going a certain mile an hour, and the brake feels different and everything. So it's like, it really does feel a lot slower. Like everything, when you're racing with those other guys, there'll be 38 of us this weekend.
Yeah.
It's very methodical. It's all moving together. And, from inside the car, you probably feel like you're going about 80 miles an hour just because everything's moving together. And it's really cool. It's really sick.
So give us a little insider knowledge here. I mean, I love watching it because, I mean, you're literally within inches of the next guy's bumper. I mean, and in fact, you're probably not even inches at times because you're trying to get that draft and you're bumping them a little bit. I mean, what are like sort of like the shorthand between you and the drivers? Because you have to work together on a certain extent so that you don't all just crash out.
Yeah.
But on another extent, you want to beat every one of them every single week.
Yeah, I'd say that, there's opportunities that you take at the right times. And I think those decisions you make are also respect that you have for the other drivers. Now, when it comes down to a green, white checkered, you're going to take that extra inch that might not work, but may cause a little bit of a stack up or something, but you'll take that opportunity. The decision making behind a race car is practically instant. The things that you have to do at a moment's notice to either get that spot or to miss that wreck is wild. And, it's in a very aggressive sport, but it's like controlled chaos, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's very intense. Yeah. It's definitely intense.
Well, I know that now it's probably, it's been a couple decades, but like just the safety of these cars has advanced notably. I mean, and the Dale Earnhardt crash is, probably the pivot point for a lot of people, certainly casual fans on the move towards that. I mean, do you think about safety, or you just it's as safe as it can be, or it's as safe as it's going to be, and certainly it's there just with the way they build the stock cars. I know that you're tethered in.
Yep. Got Hans devices.
Yeah, you have all of the Hans devices. I mean, you have all of those things. So I mean, do you think about safety when you're making these split-second decisions, or it's now's the time, you got to go, here we go?
You subconsciously, you definitely understand and know the risk of racing, and that's just kind of in the back of your mind when you show up to a race weekend. But to get that extra spot and to be aggressive when you need to, we know, and NASCAR's done a really great job with the safety procedures and the equipment that we have, like the Hans devices and our belt systems and everything, and the way they build our seats. The race cars are the safest they've ever been, and luckily, there's hasn't been any serious casualties or any, tremendous injuries in racing recently. And, it's definitely a known risk, but, to be a racer, you got to take that chance and not be worried about it.
So, I have a relative, and he's a very big NASCAR fan, and it's been fun to talk to him, and it's actually fun to watch races with him because he's very knowledgeable about the cars, but also like the business of NASCAR. I'd imagine, like with many entrepreneurs and many of the people that we interact with in the business community, there's the thing that you love, and for you, that's racing. But I'd imagine that you spend a considerable amount of time on the business of racing as well. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so with racing, the driver is the brand. That's what you're trying to sell, right? So, I work with guys like Tim Leonard and Andrew DeMorist and a lot of people on the marketing side of things to try and bring partners together that are meaningful. And YSS being one of them, and you want to, as a race car driver, your brand, your social appearance online, and all the statistics and analytics of engagement and stuff is really important. But I've leaned more towards after chasing partnerships that are very meaningful and more than just a logo and a sticker on a car.
Yeah.
And at times that can be a little more difficult and has its struggles, but I really enjoyed like the hustle and the grind aspect of it. And that was something that, I had when I was younger and dealing with addiction and alcoholism. And, today I get to, chase after things that are meaningful I enjoy the business side of it. And I hope one day maybe I could take over my dad's team or at least be a factor or a part of that. And, I'm very business minded and I've really enjoyed that aspect of it.
So your brother, races every weekend as well. You talk to him a lot. Do you compare notes?
So when he used to run back when it was Nationwide and Xfinity, he could share some notes with me, but the cars have changed a lot since then. And him being in the Cup Series, the car is a lot different than the O'Reilly car. But the other side of that is that he does remember and have experience at places that I haven't been to before. So he is very knowledgeable and understands racing very well to give me good notes and feedback and stuff. And also to have built a really good team around me of coaches and spotters and things that are also very knowledgeable as well, and that factor into a race weekend.
I love this rapid fire, by the way. When you're in that car, you're talking with your crew, your pit crew. You got to communicate stuff to them. They're communicating stuff to you. Do you feel like the car? I mean, like, are you like when something happens? I mean, these things are high RPM here. I mean, you're going fast. I mean, you're banging up on these vehicles here just by default of just racing them. When something goes wrong, I mean, do you have a pretty good sense of this is what I'm feeling, this is what I think it is? Because they can't know right away.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and sometimes too, it's mechanical. So, if you get into like a physical wreck, you can see, okay, hey, the left rear rim is bent, and that's why it's has a bad vibration stuff. So on the mechanical side of it, it's up to the driver to know, and we feel it in our butt of the seat, right? Yeah. That's what we say in racing, and it's up to us to be able to give the proper feedback to the crew chief and to the spotter to make the correct adjustments on the race car so we can go faster and be better.
Does the spotter tell you when to go?
So, the spotter controls the race essentially from the top of the grandstands above him. So, he's, watching out for, wrecks, letting me know if I'm clear or someone's on the inside of me so we can make those decisions essentially instantly. Yeah. And, the spotter is kind of like he's essentially you, but up higher and has a better perspective. He's trying to visualize what you're feeling and what he's seeing from his point of view, and also trying to help you relate that feedback, because there's stuff that's going on the racetrack that I don't necessarily see depending on where I'm at. Say, hey, this guy was running a little bit tighter during the race. He moved up a lane and it seemed to work and he got faster. So then he can feed me that information. I can try it out and hope to be faster as well.
Do you always know what position you're in?
Sometimes you try to have a good mental note of it at the start of the race, and depending on how chaotic it gets or whatever, I typically don't know where I'm at until a caution comes out or a stage break, and I'm like, hey, where are we at?
They don't continually feed it to you?
No.
It just doesn't matter?
It's not that it doesn't matter. I'd say the biggest thing that I get is lap time, so I can know if I'm trying something, that if it's working or if I'm getting faster or slower is kind of the biggest thing.
Okay. Did they feed you sort of lap times like throughout?
Oh, yeah.
Every lap?
I like to have it every lap.
Oh, really?
Yep.
And what, like on this short track for this weekend, if you make an incremental change, like what is that? I mean, it's like a fraction of a second, right?
Yeah. So I mean, in racing, you're chasing tenths.
Right.
So it's a very tight field, and the O'Reilly Series is really competitive. So you're not chasing seconds, you're chasing tenths, and a minor change can be tremendous, where you can pick up half a second, or it can put you back half a second. So every adjustment you make is you're chasing tenths of a second. It's ridiculous.
I mean, it is nuts. That's the part I appreciate. On a short track like this weekend, what's the strategy? I'm not looking for really secret information. Although this may not be out before Saturday, so it doesn't matter. But I mean, what's the strategy? Everyone has a strategy.
Yeah.
Are there certain like corners that are easier to pass on, or is the straightaway probably better to pass on?
So it kind of depends on how your car's handling. A lot of your passes will happen on exits of the corner. So, leaving, turn 2 and onto the back stretch, trying to get runs underneath or above people. But also too, I'd say on the strategy side of things on the short tracks predominantly is going to be, tire wear and managing tires.
Yeah.
So that way, I'm not sure of our allotment for this week on how many sets of stickers we have. But you're going to want to try to manage your tires and make them last as long as possible. So by the end of the race, you still have a set of fresh Goodyears to put on the race car, which is
For that last push?
Yep, exactly.
That's always been one of the things that I've really appreciated just talking with people watching the race is the strategy around those types of things. And so I'll offer a couple of examples, but give us additional ones of things that maybe the casual fan may not know. I know it's like, well, you want that clean air, that's going to help the engine. The tires is certainly a thing on when you switch those out, because when you do, you're very quickly at an advantage. Do you have teammates on the O'Reilly series?
Not this year, I don't.
Okay.
And for some of the teams that
Others
I
may?
do. Yeah, no,
Okay.
Majority of others do. There are some single car teams like the one I'm racing for tomorrow. I'd say the biggest thing that to the naked eye probably doesn't understand is like how aerodynamics play into a race weekend. Depending on how you and another guy enter the corner together, they can get on your left rear quarter panel and take the air off you and make your car loose. So that's not something that a mechanical change can necessarily have an impact on. So, that's a huge part of it as well. And you see that a lot with super speedways like Daytona and Talladega where, you're drafting and pushing each other and the person behind you is probably going to end up running a faster lap because they're sucked up behind you and running faster. So I'd say the aerodynamics is probably one of the tougher things to understand from a casual fan because it's not something that you really see, but you can tell if you know what to look for.
How challenging is any race physically on you? I know that you likely don't feel it in real time. Like you're in the mode, you're here for it. The adrenaline is going, your world is slow, yet you're going 130 miles an hour. But when you get done, I mean, is it this huge physical letdown?
You definitely take a big sigh after you get out of the race car. I'd say the biggest thing that us drivers deal with, all of us are in the gym every day during the week and, working hard on the, strength and physical aspect. But the other thing too is, the heat conditioning. The race cars can get upwards of 120 to 130 degrees Fahrenheit in the car. So
what, really?
Oh yeah. So like learning, especially at the hotter weekends, like places like where they race at Sonoma, Darlington, some of these places in the South that get really hot, luckily, they've developed and we have these cool suits that'll run cold water through our suit to help manage our body temperature. But I'd say the biggest thing is where are you at mentally, because when you start getting hot, as we all do, right, our reaction times get slower and, we're not processing things as quick. So you want to be as sharp as you can mentally, not just on the physical side, but, mainly on the mental side, because, when your reaction times are getting slower behind a car, you're losing lap time by the second.
You hydrate all week for this?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like today is strictly water and Pedialyte.
I mean, seriously, you just have to be sweating like crazy in that thing.
Yeah, I sweat a lot. I do a lot of fluids and stuff, and I'm one of those guys. I sweat very heavily, but you could lose a couple pounds of water weight each race.
I mean, as you're talking about all this, we talk about the safety and certainly the heat. I mean, my mind went to your mom. I mean, I'm sure she's wired for this. She grew up with this, but I mean, it's she went through it with your dad, and now your brother's racing, you're racing. I mean, like, I feel stressful.
Yeah, my mom, she's I love her to death. She's been so awesome. She, I put her through a lot of stress in life, so she actually likes to hide out in the motorhomes during my races. And for me and my brother, it's just, she knows they're safe and whatnot. She just prefer not to watch. But
I bet.
She's our biggest cheerleader when we have great days, and even when we have bad days, she's still there supporting the heck out of us. So she likes to hang out in the motorhome, and she'll have the race on, but she doesn't want to be on the pit box or on pit road. She knows everything's under control, and every time a caution comes out, she's very, who was it? Is Carson or Cody in it? But she's great.
All right. Well, we conclude every episode. We talk about a professional win from the last week. I mean, this week is certainly a professional win for you, Andrew, so I want you to come up with a different one. But Carson, come up with a professional win from the last week. It can be something small, it can be something big.
Honestly, I would say this partnership with YSS, and I'm not saying that because Mr. Allen's right here next to me. This is something that I've really wanted to do. And over the last few years, I've worked on proposals and trying to find people that I could build a relationship with, not just a sponsorship, but a relationship to promote and talk about this. And this is something that I'm very passionate about. So I'd say this is the biggest win. You know, I've won races recently and whatnot, but this is the biggest win for me in the last couple of years, for sure.
Andrew, jump in here.
Yeah, I think it's awesome that Carson said that. I feel it. This is more than just a typical sponsorship. This is a relationship and a connection that I do think has the possibility to actually save lives. And so I really appreciate you sharing that. My professional win last night, as most people know, I'm a person in long-term recovery. I still attend 12-step meetings. I want to build a movement to make Iowa one of the greatest places in the country for young people to recover. And I had this thought a while ago. God, I feel like, has made me uniquely useful in this space. And I was thinking, what would success look like? And it would look like if every meeting I went to, I would see alumni from YSS and Ember. And last night at a meeting, not too far from here, there was a young man and a young woman, both of their own volition, on their own, having completed the program at a 12-step meeting, awesome, right alongside me and 30 other people, embracing recovery, understanding that this is the easier, softer way. And team, I just feel like we can make Iowa, Central Iowa, one of the greatest places in the country. And it is like a flywheel. That first turn is hard, right? But once you get the turn in, it becomes easier and easier. So if we're graduating, however many people, let's just say 5 or 6 a year, stay in Central Iowa. In 5 years, that's 25. And I feel like the wheel just keeps turning. So I'm excited to be part of the movement. I'm really grateful for you, Carson, and for you, Eric, for giving us this platform, for all that you do for this community, for exposing the personal stories and the professional journeys. We're grateful.
Well, Andrew, President, CEO of YSS, I mean, thank you for the opportunity. I mean, we talked about this on Friday, and we very quickly made it happen. And Carson Ware, best of luck in the 47 car this weekend at the Iowa Speedway. Come back to Iowa.
Absolutely.
This is truly, it was an honor to talk about not only this campaign, but to kind of unpack with someone who's driving these NASCARs, what it's really like to be in there. And I appreciate both of you for the opportunity.
I appreciate you for having us. Thank you, sir.
For those listening, if you like this episode, and you absolutely should, we would love if you would subscribe and share it with others. This is the Area Podcast from the Ames Regional Economic Alliance. Personal stories, professional journeys.